鼻がきれいだ. If you can't tell why that just sounded off, you're not alone. Pitch accent is often overlooked by Japanese learners. Today, I'll walk you through the fundamentals. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to Monochrome Japanese, a peaceful space where you can focus on your Japanese study. I'm your host, Shiho. Today I'm going to share some basic but essential knowledge about the pitch accent of standard Japanese, which is widely spoken and understood throughout the country. More specifically, I'll explain what pitch accent even means, introduce the 2 core rules, and the 4 patterns of it. But before we dive in, we need to get a handle on how Japanese is pronounced rhythmically, which is a key foundation for grasping pitch accent. In Japanese, the rhythm of words is based on units called moras. A mora is kind of like a syllable, but not exactly the same. You can think of moras as the beats that make up a word's timing. For example, the word ki has only 1 mora. Kaku obviously has 2 moras. Taberu has 3. Hajimeru has 4. And furikaeru 5. Simple, right? But sometimes it might not be so obvious. For example, toru has 3 moras, but it sounds like 2 syllables. Kyokasho has 4 moras, but it sounds like 3 syllables. The same goes for toshokan. Gakko sounds like 2, but it's also a 4. As you can see, a mora doesn't have to start with a consonant, and it's definitely not tied to one kanji, right? Of course, there's more to Japanese pronunciation, but as long as we're clear on the concept of moras, we're good to go. Alright, let's get started. So, what is pitch accent? Now that we know what moras are, it's actually very simple. Remember these 5 words that I showed you earlier? Let's just focus on 3 of them for now. The circles show how many moras each word has, but they don't tell you the pitches. If you recall, I didn't read them as kaku, taberu, and hajimeru. Instead, I read them with a specific pattern of high and low pitches. Kaku, taberu, and hajimeru. Yes, moras have pitches. But don't worry, there are only 2 to remember: high and low. The way the pitch changes across the moras of a word is what we call the pitch accent of that word. Now you might think there must be a ton of different patterns. But thanks to the 2 simple core rules, there are actually only 4 different patterns. So, let's start with the rules first, and then the patterns will make so much sense later. Rule number 1. The first 2 moras always have different pitches. This means every word starts either high-low or low-high. Let's take 3 Mora words as an example. If we start high-low, the third Mora can be either high or low, so we get 2 possible patterns, If we start low, high, the third mora can also be high or low, which gives us another 2 patterns. Now you might be thinking, so are these the 4 patterns? Well, no. Why not? Rule number 2. Once the pitch drops, it never goes back up. So, which one breaks the rule? Yep, the first one. Because it rises again after dropping. But wait, where's the 4th pattern then? Well, this low, high, high pattern you see on the screen actually hides 2 different patterns, which brings us a total of 4. I know, the middle 2 look exactly the same. But don't worry, I'll explain why in just a minute. Okay, the patterns. To make things easier, let's change the order a bit and label them A, B, C, and D. You'll see why this is helpful later on. There are a few ways to look at pitch accent patterns, but I find the most effective method is to ask 2 simple questions. Does the pitch drop at all? If yes, which mora is the last one to have a high pitch? The answers to these questions correspond exactly the circle or squared numbers you've probably seen in most textbooks and dictionaries. Those numbers mark the pitch accent of the word. By answering these questions, we can figure out all the 4 pitch accent patterns. If the pitch doesn't drop at all, that's pattern A. This is why you sometimes see a 0 next to a pattern A word, because it doesn't have a so-called last high pitch mora. Some examples of pattern A words are 水, 着る, 私, 消える, 源. If the pitch does drop, and the last high-pitch mora happens to be the first mora of the word, that's pattern B. That's why you see a number 1 next to pattern B words. Some examples of pattern B words are 肩, 切る, 親子, 帰る, 玄関. If the last high-pitch mora is somewhere in the middle, neither the first nor the last mora, that's pattern C. That's why you see a number that's neither 1 nor the mora count next to pattern C words. In the case of 3 mora words, it has to be number 2. Some examples of pattern C words are 一人, 作る, 得意, 植物, 助ける. And as you might have guessed, if the last high-pitched mora happens to be the last mora of the word, that's pattern D. That's why you see a number equal to the mora count next to pattern D words. In the case of 3 mora words, it's number 3. Some examples of pattern D words are 山, 橋, 頭, 相手, 弟. Alright, you might be wondering now, does pattern A sound any different from pattern D? Well, if we're talking about the words themselves, they might sound exactly the same. But once you put them in sentences, they become very different. My favorite example comes from the sentence I showed at the very beginning of this video. 花が綺麗だ. and I said it sounded a bit off. If you look up the word flower in your Japanese dictionary, you'll probably see a number 2 next to it, which matches the Mora count of the word. Yes, that means it's a pattern D word. This tells us that the last high-pitched Mora is the final Mora of the word, which is na here. Now, if you've been following along, you'll realize what this really means. The particle that follows hana, which is ga in this case, should be pronounced with a low pitch. So, it should be hana ga kirei da rather than hana ga kirei da. Notice how the latter makes the word sound like a pattern A word, which happens to be the word nose in Japanese. Well, hana ga kirei da might also make sense, but only in a totally different context. I believe now you understand why this sounded off. Let's recap today's video with a short quiz. From what you see on the screen, starting with 2 Moras, try to identify which pitch accent patterns actually exist in standard Japanese. I'll show you the answers shortly, but feel free to pause the video now and take your time to figure them out. Okay, here's the answer. Did you get them all right? Now, try to recall what patterns they follow and the numbers that mark their pitch accent in textbooks and dictionaries. You can pause the video here. Yes, it's pattern B, A, and D, with number 1, 0, and 2. It'll be really helpful if you can also list some words that follow these patterns and practice reading them out loud. Alright, next up, 3 Moras. Now, pause the video before I show you the answer. These 2 are correct. Now, what are the patterns and numbers? Pause the video if you want. It's pattern B and C, with number 1 and 2. Try to list some words that follow these patterns and practice your reading. Next, 4 Moras. You can pause the video now. Only these 2 patterns exist. Now, pause the video again and work on the patterns and numbers. Yes, both of them are pattern C, but with number 3 and 2. Again, find some words that follow these patterns and practice. Alright, that's all for today's video. I hope you found it useful. Oh, before I go, there's one more thing. Well, some of you have probably already figured this out, but just in case. Since the number that marks the pitch accent shows the last high-pitched Mora of the word, it's a really useful hint for knowing where to drop the pitch. When you see everything laid out in a table like this, it becomes much easier to grasp the whole concept than you might expect. Wait, the whole concept? How about one more word? Like ki, or hi, or ha, right? Of course I didn't forget them. Voila! As you can see, it's even easier, as there's only one Mora. I recommend checking this table against what you've learned today, and trying to find at least 3 commonly used words for each possible combination of Mora count and pitch accent pattern. But of course, The more the merrier. You're also very welcome to leave a comment below with the words you've come up with, or any thoughts and ideas you'd like to share. Alright, this brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe to my channel and share my videos with anyone you know who's learning Japanese. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.